Welcome to the Commerce Tomorrow podcast, your one stop to learn about the technology that's powering the future of commerce. Here are your hosts, Dirk and Kelly.
Welcome to an episode of the Commerce Tomorrow podcast. I am pleased to be joined by Bruno Borges. He is a developer advocate at Microsoft. Welcome, Bruno.
Hey, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me.
Do you want to give us all a quick background of your professional experience, where you came to Microsoft from, what you did before this, and also what you do at Microsoft?
Absolutely. I've been working in this space of IT, software development, software architecture since 2000, 2001. As a core Java developer, building mostly enterprise applications, systems of records, using relational databases, and I see the transformation that the industry has gone through in the past decade. Last 5 to 6 years, I was working at Oracle as a product manager for mostly for developer engagement, developer outreach for Oracle Cloud, Java technologies, and also helping the Oracle database folks over there. And then Microsoft said, hey, we need to ramp up this Java thing on Azure. We need to communicate better with Java developers. And they said, hey, are you up for it? I said, absolutely. And later this February, this late February 2018, I joined Microsoft to lead a team of Java developers and evangelists to help shape not only the Azure solutions and Microsoft solutions for Java developers, but also to bring feedback into Microsoft engineering groups to better build Java solutions. And so far, it's been pretty cool about it. What I see Microsoft doing for developers and for cloud, it's been great, and I'm very pleased to be here.
Sounds like a great journey. As you're a developer advocate, maybe you can explain to the audience how does that differ from being a developer evangelist or versus being in developer relations? And so how would you describe the role that you're filling in on your day-to-day job?
Yeah, there are many terminologies these days in sort of developer outreach. There's evangelist, developer relations, advocate, and the way that I like to describe is when we are an advocate, we are speaking on behalf of developers and developer communities for to the company that we work for, right? So I'm a Java developer advocate. I kind of represent Java developers. So my main focus is to bring feedback into product engineering groups from developers that I talk to, from needs that I see online at conferences, at customers, at user groups. And I bring that feedback into engineering teams to shape the roadmap, prioritize wish lists, and so forth. And a developer evangelist, it's usually folks who are always out there talking on behalf of the company and doing this only outbound activity. And we as advocates, we prefer the balance of outbound and inbound activities. And developer relations is just the way we define the overall activities as a group. So we have our own team of developer relations, and we have developer advocates. We have folks who work with events planning. We have folks who work with engineering teams as program managers and different pieces. And we all together deliver the developer relations strategy for Microsoft. And back then at Oracle, I was doing that same thing. So developer advocacy is the best term that for us that we prefer. And many folks like to see that as a great job. You're traveling, you're coding, you're on social media, you're blogging, you're doing videos and podcasts and webcasts. But essentially, we are engineers that like a lot to share and chime in into several discussions. So that's it.
No, that's very interesting. So maybe you can walk us through Microsoft's journey to cloud, and we'll talk about this in subsequent questions as well, but Microsoft came from a very strong client-server desktop software vendor, right? It was the Windows company forever. How did Microsoft make that transition over to Azure, really fueling their growth? It's been pretty incredible.
It's been, and you mentioned Windows, and the funny story is when I joined Microsoft, they said, "Hey, what do you want, a Windows or a Mac?" And I'm a Linux user. I've been using Linux for the past 17 years, and I said, well, the closest that I can get of Linux while still being compliant with IT is the Mac. So I got a MacBook Pro, and I'm not hating the touch bar yet, but I'm pretty happy with it, and the battery is awesome. And that sort of demonstrates the changes that Microsoft has gone through in the past few years, especially in the Satya Nadella's era of Microsoft. The journey to cloud, it's really interesting. When I was thinking about joining Microsoft, I looked back and I kind of did this research where you look at how the company transformed itself, how it adapted for market needs, business needs, and customer needs. And I feel like Microsoft is is the company that is best positioned for cloud. Not because I work for Microsoft, but because I see elements such as the individual customer retail sort of thing DNA that Microsoft has with Windows and Office. So Microsoft knows how to get to the individual customer. But Microsoft also has a great background of enterprise business relationships with Windows Server, SQL Server, SharePoint, Dynamics, and many other technologies that Microsoft has successfully deployed at big companies. So you put all of that together, the capability of delivering enterprise solutions, but also the capability of talking to individuals, whether it's through an excellence in marketing strategy or just quality of the work that you deliver regarding user usability, user experience, user interface. And you see Microsoft kind of has the best elements to deliver an awesome cloud solution. So the Microsoft journey so far, to me, it's been based on putting all its learnings from past experience in successful products into a new subscription service-based technology offering.
It's funny. About a year and a half ago, we were looking for a new cloud vendor at Commerce Tools, and we spend a fair bit of money on cloud services every year. And the buying experience, we ultimately selected both Google and Azure. So we have two different clouds that we support. But the purchasing experience could not have been more different. Google's response was basically, RTFM, right? It's all documented. And to their credit, it is well documented. But there's no really pre-sales support to speak of, right? It's not like they have a huge team. They don't really have enterprise relationships. And it's crystal clear that they do not have experience selling to enterprises. And on the Microsoft side, it was a totally different experience. We had a 2-hour sit down with the head of Azure for Germany. He had a nice button-up suit. He answered all of our questions. There were requests for follow-up sessions. It was a completely different experience. And I think a lot of organizations adopting cloud these days really need that type of support.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing that customers want is to deal with robots and and pages and chatbots. It is they want that personal care, especially when they are spending millions of dollars on something, right? So maybe for small companies, when I say small, I say really small companies where you don't have even the person to deal with that relationship on your side. That's fine. But once you grow, once you have dozens and dozens of employees and you're consuming hundreds of resources in cloud, I think it's important to be able to just talk to someone. And I mean, whoever didn't, who hasn't ever called to a telco company and just press 9, hoping that it can talk to an agent, right? Eventually, you're just going to do that and skip all the other numbers. So being able to deliver that, I think it's extremely important, and that's what I saw when I considered joining the company. And I'm pretty happy that I can now even help improve that experience even further where it fits.
Let's talk a little bit more about the change of Microsoft over the last years, also on its way to the cloud, but maybe also on its cultural change a little bit. So who would have thought not only that Microsoft is as successful as they never have been now, right? So if we look at the numbers, Microsoft is doing an awesome job, but at the end, I never would have thought that they are finally becoming cool again, right? So when somebody's now talking about Microsoft, it's a cool brand again, right? And I think a lot of these credits get back to Satya, where he was just putting the right focus. Can you tell a little bit about how he did that and how he's actually changing the culture?
Satya. When I joined Microsoft, for every new employee that Microsoft gets since I think for the past 2 years, I'm sure these days it still happens. Every new employee gets a copy of Satya's book, Hit Refresh, and it's an interesting book. I still need to finish reading it, but it's an interesting book already for the couple of chapters that I read. It's amazing how Satya's focus on people, and that includes customers, right? That includes partners, that includes employees, that includes just average person using Microsoft's technology, and how all that relationship between people has shaped the new culture. I think Microsoft changed a lot because of Satya, but also because Satya gave the opportunity for people inside Microsoft to lead that change, and people who also wanted to see that change. So he was open for that. People had the sort of freedom and liberty to try things and experiment, and that was key for Microsoft's cultural change. In the past, maybe an unbalanced focus between users, customers, and products. Now that has shifted more toward customers and people, making product accessible for everyone. I think that is the ultimate result of Satya's vision, and I cannot say more than just being happy to be here at this era of Microsoft. It has completely changed, and when I joined, I saw that firsthand in meetings with engineers, product managers, directors, executives. It's about people. It's about community. If the community wants open source, if the customers want open source, we will deliver open source. If the ask is about, hey, I want it to be great, not fast, it's going to be great. If I want to be fast and also great, yep, we work on that. Really delivering what people want and not what we just believe in. I think that is the ultimate reflection that I got since I joined.
Yeah, what I can also hear out from your comments is that there's now a lot more focus again on the developer ecosystem going on around Microsoft. And another story of this year is Microsoft probably did the most discussed acquisition of 2018 so far with acquiring GitHub. From my perspective, at least from if I put my business development glasses on, probably a brilliant kind of move, though I understand a lot of questions that people are having around it. But let's probably dive a little bit into the Azure topic here. So how do you see GitHub playing into your cloud strategy? What kind of integrations would be possible? Anything that you can already share with us that you are probably involved with?
Yeah, the GitHub acquisition was interesting. Back when I was at Oracle, I was driving the Oracle account on GitHub, and lots of Oracle friends came to me after the acquisition when I was here at Microsoft, and they said, "Hey, Bruno, what did you do?" And the joke was, did you just ask people to do more GitHub stuff and Microsoft decided to simply buy it because of your feedback? It's like, yeah, almost that. It was an interesting acquisition for sure. I've been a GitHub user for a long time, and it has millions of developers, millions of repositories and projects. Key open source projects are maintained and driven through GitHub, and it's just amazing the success of the platform as a social network of developers and open source in general. So for Microsoft, and I'm happy to be here again. It was a great acquisition. The amount of information and usage and adoption of open source that GitHub knows about, and GitHub shares those reports publicly. I think having the ability to engage with this community and how this can align with the cloud message, I think it's extremely important. But it's also important to keep GitHub as independent as possible from other technologies, other services, other products. We saw the LinkedIn acquisition in the past. LinkedIn today pretty much continues the same. It has some integrations with with Microsoft's technologies, but it's mostly independent. And we see the Nat Friedman, the upcoming CEO of GitHub. Nat was on the Xamarin Group, and now he's going to lead the GitHub organization. He said, we want to keep GitHub as is. We want to make sure GitHub is as independent as possible. It even could have integration with other clouds as we see in the future. But Microsoft, for me, I would love to see. Here's my idea. I posted this publicly. I would love to see a deploy button on GitHub. I push my code and I just hit deploy, and that pushed my code on a Kubernetes cluster right away on my Azure account. I would love to see that. And I think
I thought this would be coming next week.
yeah, Don't say that out loud. No, it is an interesting.
But what would be wrong about that?
Yeah.
So what would be wrong about it, right? So as long as you have the other options still to do what you want to do, but just giving a better user experience and integration, it's would be fair enough point, right? So it's not exclusion; it's just optimization, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I think once everything is settled and there is an opportunity to build such integration, I would love to see it. And it shouldn't affect other clouds. And based on how Microsoft is doing things these days, I would even expect to have a deploy button where you would select where you want to deploy to. Do you want to deploy to a Cloud Foundry environment that is hybrid cloud? Sure. Kubernetes with a federated cluster with nodes on 3 or 4 clouds? Sure. Do you want to deploy to this specific service on that cloud? Go for it. I think there is an opportunity to build such things. And sure, if there is a chance to make the Azure deployment option, the best in class, I think it should definitely become true. It's now it's more a discussion on if and when, but the idea is definitely worth exploring.
It's funny. After the acquisition was announced, there was a chorus of people on Twitter saying this is great. There were still a handful of folks saying, Microsoft is bad. This is terrible. And it was so funny just to see the entire developer community just completely drown out those comments. So it's good to see GitHub in a friendly home, I guess.
Yeah, I saw this article that Google is also considering to buy GitHub, and Microsoft ended up making the final call. I think GitHub was and still is the best platform for developers in general. And if we can see more integration on it, that's great. And for what people are saying on the internet, I think it's some people have not gone through the different optics of Microsoft. They still believe Microsoft is this old company. Maybe it's some person that is extremely passionate about open source, about Linux, or simply hate Windows and associates Microsoft with Windows all the time and forgets about everything else that Microsoft is doing. So I think it will change eventually, even for those folks. But yeah, it was interesting to see people that are not working for Microsoft kind of defending the company and saying, hey, man, Microsoft is a new company. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, for sure. How does Azure support startups? And related question, how does Microsoft and Azure in general support diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, there's a huge push at Microsoft to ensure diversity and inclusion is covered everywhere as much as possible. And for startups, it's not different. We have a startup program. In terms of resources, I believe right now it's something up to $500,000 if you get into the program. I think it's up to 3 years. It's $500,000 up to 3 years in Azure credits, and
wow,
that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, but here's the catch. Startups eventually will mess up. They will. What I'm saying is they will most of the time start things, cloud services, VMs, create stuff, and not manage properly, and eventually they will be burning money that they shouldn't, right? Because of they're using resources that are not, just creating resources but not using them. So you're kind of wasting money. So it's extremely important for startups to be conscious that that money is limited and it will not simply grow. So if you try to scale things right away, and not be conscious about optimizations of your cloud infrastructure, that money can be burned really fast. So you have to optimize. And one great example of optimizations of cloud resource consumption is a website called haveibeenpwned.com from Troy Hunt. Troy is a security consultant, and he runs this website, haveibeenpwned.com, that basically shows you whether your password has been leaked into some data breach. So you go there, you put your email address, and it will say, hey, your email address is in a leak of passwords from Dropbox or GitHub or even Microsoft.com. I don't know. It will just tell you it was leaked. And Troy runs this website on Azure. He uses Azure Functions for the API inquiries. He has a database. I think he basically uses storage because it's like a key value kind of thing. So he uses Azure Functions. He checks the database for that email, and then he returns the data. But here's the funny fact. He has fronted his Azure Functions with Cloudflare. and Cloudflare will simply cache all the results. So 95% of the hits on his Azure Functions REST API are actually covered by Cloudflare. And 5% actually execute the function. So only 5% of the hits are actually being charged. And he spends $8 a month for wait for it, 50 million requests per day.
Not bad.
So
maybe we'll have to hire him at Commerce Tools.
yeah. So let's talk about optimization or cloud optimization. That's what people should be really conscious about. It's not just about, oh, I got free money and I should just burn it all. I think you have to be conscious on how you do things and read about cloud architecture very deeply, dig into that, and then implement things so you can get the most of your money. So for startups, it's a great thing. And not only that, but relationships as well. Microsoft mentors, Microsoft introduces startups to customers in other startups. That is the main value of a startup program. It's about relationship and networking, and Microsoft's program has that. And back to diversity and inclusion, we in our division of developer advocates, we like to talk about it. We like to represent it. We like to advocate for that topic in particular that is not even technology related. But eventually, when we can do something even greater, we do. One thing that I did recently on my team was we were offered travel coverage for a conference. And we don't need that money necessarily, right? We have our own travel budget, and we said to the organizers of the conference, hey, can you exchange these travel sponsorship that we don't need with a batch of tickets that we can give away for diversity and inclusion purposes? And they were very pleased to hear that. So with that, we kind of we gave away a few tickets to women in technology groups, and some of them will be able to attend this conference. We did that 2 times, and we really hope that we can expand and make it an official part of our conference program. So that is just an example of things that we do, but Microsoft has even greater programs that are beyond our particular team, and Microsoft really wants to make that part of the culture. It already is, but we want to expand that to the outside. We want to see customers applying it. We want to see partners working hard on it, and conferences and content that is built online that includes everyone. So in terms of accessibility, Microsoft has a huge program of accessibility for Windows and Office. One good example, PowerPoint has a CC closed caption feature. When you're presenting, it gets the audio and turns into a subtitle right on screen to make sure that people who cannot hear can read the text of what you're saying. And that is just an example, again, of what Microsoft does and how much Microsoft cares.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's good to hear. So since this is a commerce-focused podcast, what is Microsoft's strategy for retail, just generally? I know Microsoft owned a commerce platform at one point that was later sold. Microsoft is really strong in ERP and CRM, but what's the strategy for retail and commerce more broadly, I guess?
What is Microsoft's product? It's Dynamics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dynamics. It's you see, I'm at Microsoft for 6 months, so I'm still learning a lot. It's for Azure specifically, what I can say is Azure has this amazing marketplace for companies to offer their solutions on top of Azure, and even do the selling through Azure. Support is through Azure. That facilitates and helps small companies to offer solutions on Azure marketplace, let's call it retail marketplace, small companies that maybe don't have the resources to manage billing and support and everything, Azure Marketplace has that technology for them, and that structure that enables them to sell and scale and grow much faster. In terms of Microsoft being part of retail, the strategy, I cannot say much, or I don't know much, frankly. But Dynamics again is the go-to solution for companies managing their resources internally. For Azure specifically, that's where I am located. It's just being just enabling retails to scale on top of its cloud infrastructure. I saw this announcement a couple of weeks ago of Walmart going full cloud on Azure. Not maybe because they hate Amazon only, but it is a great solution. Walmart and Microsoft have been partnering for a long time already. Walmart has already been using Azure. And now it's just a matter of scaling that, and Azure is in the right position to support it. So, for any other points of retail, Microsoft has that DNA. As I said earlier, Microsoft knows how to talk to customers. Microsoft's division of Xbox, Office, Windows, Surface. Surface is a great laptop. I'm really thinking about getting one. I think it's in its DNA, and that reflects on other areas like Azure to support other customers that are also in the retail space to grow. That's my take on it, but I wish I could go beyond that.
No, that already gave some good insights. Thanks for that. So let's talk a little bit about Java, as you're the advocate for that. And in a former life that I barely can remember, I was for a while a Java developer myself, but I don't want to talk about that today. So as Java is also the dominant language for most large-scale e-commerce projects and also commerce platforms out there, how do you see the language has been changed and evolved over the past decade?
Java has become the number one language, especially across enterprise. As you said, commerce tools and enterprise solutions are majorly written in Java. And the language has evolved quite well. This year, or last year, by the end of the year, Oracle announced a bunch of long-awaited announcements, updates to the Java platform, and even considering open sourcing commercial features of Java. That was huge, and now Microsoft, Oracle I keep changing Oracle and Microsoft. It's so recent. Oracle is moving forward with Java enhancements, not only on the language but also on the JVM or the runtime. That will make customers even more confident of either investing a new project, but also continue its investments for existing projects, and not think about migrations, but think about how can I actually take advantage of Java even further with the new versions and so on. So for developers, the enhancements of the Java language, it's a great thing for productivity. It's a great thing for clarity, for being able to write code that one can maintain later. And the way it was enhanced recently to allow customizations of runtimes, that enables the Java ecosystem and companies that have built solutions for Java to go beyond and really continue its investments. I would say Java will not go away anytime soon. People have declared Java is dead several times in the past, and and some even compare with COBOL. And I would say, well, COBOL is still there. So it's not a bad thing at all. So I'm pretty happy with the technology. I'm happy with Oracle's direction for the language and the platform. And I can see a bright future for it and the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, and Java EE is really what folks have historically used for commerce, right? Like as you mentioned, all the major commerce platforms out there have used Java EE in some way. Can you run us through quick how Java EE has progressed from Sun all the way now to the Eclipse Foundation? It's had quite a story, right?
It is. Java EE started, indeed, at Sun as a way to standardize how people would build enterprise application system of records with database access, web interface, messaging, and integration, all the way within the application and outside. And it has been extremely successful. And some people hate it. I would say half of the world hates it. The other half loves Java EE. And it's a great platform. And Oracle made the right decision to donate it to the Eclipse Foundation. So once Oracle bought Sun, Oracle was already investing in Java EE by that time when they had BEA WebLogic. And that was extremely successful. It still is today. WebLogic is a great commercial application server. It has great features especially for Oracle database and messaging systems. I think Oracle will continue that the support of WebLogic, but as a steward of Java EE, because Java EE is this sort of set of standards driven by different vendors, not just Oracle, I think it was the right decision to offload that stewardship to the Eclipse Foundation and let other players share the cost of maintaining the platform, but also being able to drive the future of the platform even forward. And today, the name that has been decided to call it is Jakarta EE. It's an interesting story because Jakarta was the name of the project under the Apache Foundation in the past that would group all Java-related projects. So if you went to the Apache website, you go to Apache Jakarta, and you would find Apache struts and other Java technologies in there. Eventually, Apache Foundation gave up on that sort of umbrella structure, but Jakarta was still a brand, a trademark of Apache Foundation. So when Eclipse Foundation thought, hey, can we use this Jakarta thing? And Apache Foundation was extremely happy to say, yes, please do. So Eclipse Foundation has authorization from Apache Foundation to use the trademark Jakarta, and the new platform will be called Jakarta EE. And it's basically Java EE, but under a new governance model with different players, and really moving forward the platform to a more cloud-native microservice approach, where we can see the platform taking advantage of modular a modular platform of Java, and I think everyone can benefit from it. So again, half of the world hates it, but the other half will continue to be happy. One interesting thing, Microsoft is part of Jakarta EE under the Eclipse Foundation. We shared support for the platform when I think 3 months ago. Microsoft is also a sponsor of the Eclipse Foundation and the Apache Foundation, and we are really excited to help shape the next phase of this history.
Yeah, it's exciting times. It's I was at Oracle when a lot of this was happening, and it's been great just to see how the community has coalesced around this new Jakarta EE vision, and I think without fracturing the community, I think it was well done. So you use the term cloud native, and I think a lot of our listeners have an idea of what cloud native means, but Maybe you could give your thoughts on what that term actually means.
Yeah, I have my opinion on it. I think the way the technology space is moving so fast, I think nobody can be extremely confident in sharing something as a fact or a standard. I think it's all based on opinions, right? So whoever has the opinion that most people are sharing, that becomes the de facto standard. So my opinion on cloud native is, you know, building applications that take advantage of cloud ergonomics and economics. You know, you build an application knowing that you want or need to scale fast. So your application needs to be built in a way that can scale fast. So you apply um, some practices, some technologies, and some um, methodologies, even in the way how you manage your source code or how your team is set up. Uh, I think if your application is built in a very centric way, um, you end up with this application that can only scale vertically. And when you build your application with a more cloud native approach, you're ensuring that your application can scale horizontally, and that to me is key. So it doesn't matter what programming language, doesn't matter what tool, doesn't matter uh, which cloud, doesn't matter which platform. It's about what do you expect from your application once you need scalability, and being cloud native to me is that.
I think that's a good take on the question. So let's quickly, because we are shortly getting to the end of this episode, but let's quickly talk about tools and services around developers. Maybe first talking a little bit about commerce platforms. So what is it that Azure offers for self-hosted large-scale commerce platforms that still, I would say, the vast majority of companies are, at least till today, yet running on?
Well, I'm pretty sure commerce tools will need databases, right? I think that is a requirement. So where you host your data is an important aspect of commerce tools, and at least on Azure, um, being able to choose where and how you host your data uh, uh, is an important aspect of our strategy. Um, Supporting different customers, different needs. So if you are into relational database, you got that covered with different offerings, not only Microsoft SQL Server, but also open source databases like Postgres and MySQL. If you do need some other database, or you have to use other database, back to the marketplace, we have partnership with some other cloud software vendors. So databases like Oracle are available, DB2, and so on. So customers have that choice. If it's a NoSQL database need, we also have a solution called Cosmos DB that provides a globally distributed database, NoSQL database solution. You can select partitions, you can select which data centers, you can select a lot of things based on availability of data. So it's an interesting solution. If you still need any other open source database, I mean, Azure has an infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, IaaS, so you can definitely bring your own open source solutions on top of VMs or containers as you see fit. So that is just on the data. For application runtime, there are many ways of deploying commerce tools, and I think the easiest way for most will be just a VM, right? You get a VM and you set up VM cluster, you set up scaling options, and if your application is built in a cloud native way, it should be able to horizontally scale. But we have been investing a lot on Kubernetes and Docker containers, and I've seen some commerce tools that are now designed for that sort of deployment option, and these technologies expedite the scalability extremely well.
No, I think that makes sense. Final question before we wrap up here, because we're running short on time, but how does Azure support developer productivity, especially for commerce developers? What types of services do you offer, both in terms of like professional and support services, but also cloud services in Azure?
For developers, Azure has a great set of tools, not only services that can help prototype and quickly build experiments that may or may not end up in production. As you know, once you build a REST API and that's good as an experiment, it might end up in production. On Azure, there's a set of services on the serverless platform. Two of them I highly recommend Azure Functions that supports different languages: C#, Node, Java, Python, JavaScript, Node, and Azure Logic Apps, which is this sort of that website, if this then that. So
yeah, I use it all the time.
Yeah, so Logic Apps is basically that, right? So I call it the enterprise version of this, if this and that. So you have lots of connectors, you have lots of flows that you can build. So for developers to try something extremely fast and build something and deliver, that's super cool. And then there's a website that is a low-code service that is a low-code platform for building websites. So you can quickly design a web interface, plug into Logic Apps, execute serverless functions with custom business logic, and host data on Cosmos DB. You combine all of these services, and you have your ultimate prototyping solution for new tools and apps for your commerce. So that provides a great productivity for developers. And if developers still want to go hardcore coding, Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio itself, a C#, Azure CLI, bunch of Java libraries and SDKs, not only for Java, but for different languages. All of that provides the great toolkit for developers to be extremely productive in the cloud. And last but not least, there is an interesting service called Azure Dev Test Labs that gives developers access to an environment that can spin up a VM, use whatever they want inside that VM, set up a database, an application server, Docker, whatever. And it's a VM that you can turn off every night. So if you're a developer that works from 9 to 5, which you should, and unplug by the end of the day, the VM will turn off and turn on again the next day. So you actually save a lot of money with that sort of cloud resource for development purposes. So and that not even covering the AI machine learning stuff that is also available. But I think Azure provides best-in-class developer productivity tools for building cloud-based applications.
Yeah. Well, with that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thanks for joining us. Keep up all the good work at Microsoft. I was so glad to hear that you ended up there.
Well, thank you so much.
Your listeners, our listeners can follow you on Twitter, where you're very active and always posting good content. So again, keep up the good work, and thanks again for joining us. And we'll wrap it there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kelly. Take care.